Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to have a chat about the HeyGears UltraCraft Reflex RS. I'm amazed that I managed to say that all in one go and have completely ruined the delivery by pointing out that I managed it. I did the thing. So, this is a sponsored video. HeyGears did send me the Reflex RS to check out along with a wash station and a cure station. I will say before we get into anything, I am impressed at the resilience of the cure station especially. The cure station on the way here, it clearly had an adventure, a painful adventure that seems to have revolved around someone dropping the box repeatedly, maybe even shoving it down a set of stairs, I don't know. It has not had a happy life so far, and yet it continues to function absolutely fine. No such issue with the Reflex RS or with the wash station, but I am genuinely impressed at how well the cure station has held up in the face of some extreme delivery abuse. Now, there is something that we need to talk about before we get into this proper, which is my incredibly unfair expectations when it comes to resin printers. Actually, no, that's not true. It's not an unfair expectation, it's an unfair desire. What I want from a resin 3D printer is somewhat less than reasonable, because ideally, what I want to be able to do is see an STL of a model I like. I want to be able to click 4 or 5 times and then have it within about 3 hours without having to do any work. Now, I'm fully willing to admit that in terms of like consumer expectations, it's a bit much. It's a bit much. Resin printing is far more accessible than it used to be, but it's probably not fair to expect that from anything. So I don't expect it, that's just the dream, right? That's just the wish, the hope, because when it comes to 3D printing, both resin and FDM, I don't necessarily have resin printing, or printing in general, as a hobby. It's a supplement to my other hobbies. I love a bit of AOS, I love a bit of 40k, I love D&D, I love painting, converting miniatures, and as such, 3D printing is a fantastic supplement for those hobbies. But I've never really felt a draw to it as a hobby in and of itself, even though it kind of is. There are plenty of you out there who will get genuine enjoyment and like a feeling of doing a good job from properly nailing down all the settings for your prints, finding out the best balance between quality and time, just getting everything just so, right? I don't get that enjoyment. I actively dislike having to sort that stuff out and find the process of getting reliable prints every single time to be kind of a drag, and it's not something I've ever found myself sitting there going, oh yeah, I love sitting there and tinkering with settings. I don't want that. Ideally, I would like that to be taken away from me and done by someone who has got that love and enthusiasm and is more competent than I am, which is kind of where the Reflex RS comes in so far, because I haven't had to do anything. I leveled it once I had got it unpacked, and that was it. That was it. I hadn't done anything else. I haven't changed any settings. I haven't attempted to change any settings. I have literally had my dream experience so far of simply dragging things into Blueprint, saying, print this now please, and then it starts printing, and then I take it off the printer, and it's done. This is as close to heaven as I can possibly get when it comes to 3D printing. And whilst there is maintenance and there are little things that I've had to deal with the printer, overall, when things have gone right, they've gone so right that they've made me not care about the things that haven't. Let's get into the specs first, and then we'll go into the experience of using the Reflex RS. So it's got a 10.3 inch 8K monochrome screen. It uses an NFEP release film. The build volume is 222.3 by 122.5 by 230mm. Print speed wide, the Reflex RS averages at 4.5 seconds a layer. It'll keep an eye on the lifespan of the FEP. It has residue detection and force curve monitoring. Depending on the resin you're using, there's an automatic refill function, but that's not going to be available on the PAS 10 resin, which we'll have a chat about in a moment. Something that I really like is that it does have a heated vat if you want one. It's an additional purchase. It doesn't come with a heated vat, it comes with a standard vat, but that was something that I mentioned in the last printer review that we did, that was a bit of a downside for me. Obviously, if you're printing in a controlled environment where you get to decide the temperature, then it's all good, you don't need that. But personally, where I print, I do need a heated vat because I can't control the temperature of the garage. It's usually absolutely freezing cold in there during winter, so I tend to prefer having that functionality built in. with the Reflex RS. It's got it if you want it, it doesn't have it if you don't need it. Best of both worlds, I think. Now, I did have one small issue where it refused to print twice in a row, but that was a case of emptying everything out, cleaning everything, sending it to 0 again. It worked fine, and then it would print. So I don't know what the issue was. The support team, who was super helpful throughout all of it, they really tried to narrow down what it was. They figured maybe there was some debris or some residue left in the tank that was causing an issue. Whatever that issue was, it just stopped, and it was totally fine since. I've done plenty of prints from that point on. There's been no damage to the FEP, there's been no damage to the build plate, it's not complained about anything else again. So I would love to tell you what happened and how to fix that issue if you were to come across it yourself, but it must have just been debris. I can't think of anything else that it would be, because, as I say, it just stopped doing it, and then it printed fine, and it has been printing fine since. Now, when it comes to ease of use, I think we should take a quick look at the software so you can see how easy it is to take a model that's completely unsupported and have it ready for printing in a matter of minutes, without really having to do anything yourself, because this is a big plus for me. We want the Reflex RS, we want the regular resin tank. Now, I do technically have the pulsing release resin tank equipped, but I'm using it only for the heating functionality, not for the pulsing release functionality, so you just stick with the regular resin tank for that. We want general purpose, modelling Part 10, because that is the same as the upcoming PAS 10 resin that they're doing, and we'll go for just standard thickness, and we're ready to go. Now, I'm just going to chuck in all 5 parts in one go. That should just throw them in there. It's pretty quick with this. I've gone for one of the heavy infantry for new Antioch from Trench Crusade. Having thrown them in there, we're just going to click one-click slice and then start. And that's it. That's all we should have to do. It's going to go through, make sure that they don't need repairing, and if they do need repairing, it'll repair the model. And from that point on, you kind of just sit and wait for about a minute or so. I know that looks dodgy now, but it does sort itself out, don't worry. I did initially think, this looks like it could cause significant issues, but no. And that's pretty much it. That's all you have to do for unsupported models if you want to do it that way. You obviously can lay them out yourself, you can support them yourself, there's more stuff that you can do if you want to be more hands-on. And I will say that when it comes to especially like infantry models and stuff, you're actually better off usually having the supports on the back rather than the front. But I mean, as a simple solution, as a way to just get you up and running, I do genuinely really like this. It is super helpful. And there we go, slicing finish. Now, of course, there's always going to be pros to doing this stuff yourself, but if you're in a rush and you just want the thing to print and you want it to print now, I really can't fault the one-click slicing that they've got going on here. Hello everyone, it's me from the future editing this video, although that's still technically in the past because this isn't going to go out for like another week. Anyway, HeyGears have actually spoken to me about the automatic support option, and they've taken the feedback provided. I talked about the fact that, you know, it can put the supports on the front, which is not always ideal for miniatures especially, and they are planning to enhance the configuration of that support feature soon, so they want to address that concern, and they've taken the feedback, and they're working on it to make it better. So I wanted to just let you know about that, because that's kind of important. When you're deciding who to give your money to, you kind of want to know if the company is going to listen to what you got to say and do something about it, and they are. Anyway, back to Past Me, which to you will be past me. Actually, I've just realised I'm wearing the same t-shirt. I probably could have got away with it, but too late now. When it comes to getting your sliced files onto the Reflex RS, you've got a choice of doing it either via LAN, via the cloud, or via the TF card expansion slot, and you can monitor it via your phone as well using Blueprint Studio. It also keeps track of what the printer's doing through Blueprint on the desktop as well. I have printed a few things using that one-click system, and honestly, it seems pretty flawless. I've not had any issues in terms of failures. I've not had anything, you know, come out looking rough or weird. Supports are generally in a good position and have good placement, and I've yet to have any issues where supports are either difficult to remove or have failed during the printing process. The only thing I'd say is that when it comes to printing miniatures, since that's mainly what I use 3D printing for, you're generally better having the supports on the back. That is the only downside that I would give for the one-click support system. It tends to just go for whatever is the most efficient for printing, which is absolutely understandable. That's how it should work. But if you are printing miniatures, quite a lot of the time you do not want those supports on the front, you'll want them on the back. I will say for everything that was pre-supported, they came out looking really, really nice and really had no issues with marks or debris left over from when the supports were removed. In fact, let's take a look at some of those models now. So as you can see, I've printed a good range of stuff. High detail small miniatures, things that are a bit bigger but have a little bit more in terms of just like smoother surfaces, something nice and gribbly, and there's a massive thing that you can't see right now because it takes up the entirety of the area that we're filming on here. So we'll look at that last. Safe to say, it's pretty big. Pretty sizable. It's got the girth. Let's start out by looking at some of the smaller ones. These are from Bestiarum Games, Bestiarum Miniatures, and I picked these because Bestiarum Games make some of my absolute favourite sculpts. These are very, very detailed. They're quite small, they're kind of more heroic scale, but Bestiarum pack a lot of detail into quite small models, which kind of makes them perfect for trying out new printers. I'm really happy with how these came out. They've come out super clean, super crisp, there's nothing in the way of noticeable layer lines, they look absolutely fantastic. The fact that this guy has got so many different textures, you can see there's rope going across the clothes, there's heads being held on by yet more rope, a very like packed with detail cloak that's kind of furry but also spiky, lots of little points and stuff all over the horns. It's come out super well. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have an ulterior motive for printing these specific miniatures. I'm absolutely going to use them to try and take the party out in D&D. So there's a little bit of like self-serving going on there, but there is also a really good amount of texture on these. Important to note as well that these weren't set to like the highest detail. These were set to the quickest printing time, because the main thing for me is having stuff quickly and easily and now. I'm somewhat less patient than I should be, so when the option is to have the thing quicker, I tend to go for the option to have the thing quicker. Things like the bottom of the cloak on this guy, it came out super well. Also that mix of chainmail and scale with a little bit of like leather over the top has come out really nicely, as has the cloth around the face too. Really happy. Now of course one of the risks with models like this is that sometimes when you're taking the supports off you can break them, which is exactly what happened with this guy, which I'm quite sad about. The hilt on the sword died, fully came off whilst I was taking the supports off, and so did one of the plumes on the head. There's a lot of very small spindly sections on this though, so I'm not surprised, I'm just kind of more disappointed in myself for doing it. To be honest, I did have a slight moment of panic once I printed this guy because I forgot that he's wearing a kind of face mask thing, and I thought to myself, there's no way that the printer has done so well with all the others and yet still produced a face with no discernible features. No, it's meant to be like that, luckily. Again though, come out nice and clean, nice and crisp, the fabric looks really good, there's no discernible layer lines, things like the face of the lion have worked really well, so has the fur on the cloak itself. Pretty good on those smaller miniatures. Now I also got to do something that was a bit of a treat, to be honest, which was print some stuff from Trench Crusade. Now these are not publicly available files yet, they were very kindly sent over by Trench Crusade, and I love these. These are part of the new Antioch faction, and they look really nice. You can see, like, looking at the kind of smoother sections of the armour, again, no hint of layer line. Things like the chainmails come out really nice. The detail on the diesel generator on the back has again come out pretty good. Now, I will say the one disappointing thing that I found with these is just how much stuff was left over from the supports. Now, these are different in that when I printed them, I used the software that comes with the Reflex RS to support them. These were unsupported files. Now what Blueprint can do is effectively you press one button, it does everything. If the files need fixing, it fixes them, it orients them, it also supports them, which is super good. And all of this stuff printed. No problems with the printing whatsoever. They all printed 100% success rate, which for one single button press, having just dragged everything into it and then done nothing else, that is good. But the way it oriented these unfortunately means that a lot of these support marks are on the front of the model. Now I've cleaned them up as best I can, but they definitely left heavier scarring on these than on any of the stuff that was pre-supported. But that's really the only issue that I had when it came to printing stuff. The fact that you can just do that one-click process, it does everything for you. If you are someone who just doesn't want to get into the minutiae of resin 3D printing, you just want to get a file you like, stick it in the software, make it printable, and then print it, I can't fault it for that because it does exactly what it says on the tin. It says you click it once and it's ready to go, you click it once and it's ready to go. This is another Bestiarum Games miniature, which I have to admit, I've had a nightmare of a time cleaning this. It's nothing to do with the printer, obviously, that is entirely a me problem, but good grief, there's a lot of small crevices and wires, and there's a lot of very tiny spaces for things to just sit, and it's been something of a nightmare. And even as I look at it through the camera, I can clearly tell that some of it is not washed as well as it should be, so back to the drawing board on that one. But in terms of the actual quality of the print, again, it's good. The armour has come out really nicely. There's quite a bit of texture on the armour. It's not like completely smooth or anything. It's scratched, it's dented, it's weathered, and it's come out really nicely. The cables look fantastic. The organic sections, again, look really, really good. There's also so many little tiny supports that are still lingering on this. I thought I'd got all of them, but not quite. The cloth looks really nice. Again, it's very worn and torn, which I do like. That's just more detail for the printer to pick up on, and it's come out looking good. And this is the bigger test that I did with the Reflex RS, which you can kind of tell why I left it out of this backdrop to start with. He's a big chunky boy. This is the Zygote from Parasite Collectibles, and what they've basically done is gone, imagine if the Lord of Change was really gross, which they've pulled off. Looks like a Lord of Change, but he's definitely really gross. Lots of flesh, lots of skin, lots of hands, lots of little details as well. A lot more texture going on with this one than with especially the armoured units. And again, I feel like it's come out really nicely, especially in areas like the neck and the head. There's no hint of layer line on it. Again, the feathers are quite light and fairly fragile, but they survive super well. Nothing broke off this whilst I was taking the supports off. In fact, the supports fell off this. I was very impressed with it. The Reflex RS properly got all of the detail on this, and just given how much of it is that kind of flesh texture, sometimes it can be easy for models like this to look like a blob. God knows I've printed enough things onto the printers and gone, wow, that looked great in the render, but now I'm looking at it in person, that's not got the detail that I wanted. Whereas this, I mean, it's definitely got the detail all the way around. Absolutely horrific model. I absolutely love it. It's great. Even little things like, oh, the little hand down the side of the leg that's part of the leg, and I mean, look at that. Look. Grim. Super grim. Absolutely fantastic model. So there you go, that's not everything I've printed on the Reflex RS. There is more, but this video is going to be extremely long if we go through all of it. Some of it is going to show up in another video later on down the line though, so if you're still on the fence, then watch out for that later. So those are some of the models that I've printed on the Reflex RS. There are more, but they will be showing up in a different video because I may have accidentally started another Warhammer 40k army, but what can you do? And they all come out really, really nicely. They all came out super easy as well, and that's the main thing for me. This was described to me as an easy to use 3D printer, and it is. I have literally just selected what I want to do, selected the printer, selected the type of vat, selected the type of resin, and then gone, please give me the model. And then in a few hours, I've received the model I ordered. That's pretty much it. It doesn't get much simpler than that at the moment, and I've had no failures whatsoever. I've had nothing in terms of, you know, models that have come out badly. I've had nothing in terms of supports ripping away during the printing process. Everything has printed when I've wanted it to print. Pre-supported or unsupported, they've all come out great, and I didn't have to do any work. And that, to me, perfect. With all of the positives out of the way, it's time to address the elephant in the room, which is the price of the Reflex RS. Now, you might be familiar with the Reflex, the printer before this one, which was very, very well received and was very good, and everyone I've spoken to who has one absolutely loves it, but it is also very expensive. The Reflex RS is not as expensive as the Reflex was. The early bird price is $799, and there's another $50 off if you use my discount. A big difference as well now is the fact that the proprietary resin that you have to use in these printers, that was quite expensive, and some of it remains quite expensive, but they have addressed that directly by introducing the PAS 10 resin. So that can't be put into the auto refill part of the printer, but it's also a lot cheaper than the others. The PAS 10 is $32.99. Now, I printed the models that you saw earlier, well, that are right here in fact, funnily enough, using their PARP 10 resin. The PAS 10 is the same stuff, but in a different bottle that you can't plug into the printer. You have to manually top up. Much like most other 3D printers on the market. Like, that's just You lose a little bit of functionality, but it's $32.99 a bottle as opposed to being like $55 a bottle, which is a significant change in terms of that pricing. As with all of these things, it comes down to whether you think the time gained or the reliability or just the way that you use it can justify the cost. To be honest, I have printed more stuff in the last couple of weeks than I have in a couple of months, purely because of how easy it's been to do. It's made me catch up on a bunch of stuff that I've meant to have printed for a long time, but I just don't like the faff that comes with 3D printing a lot of the time. I kind of have to summon the energy to get round to it, and I've just been doing it constantly with this because it's very easy to do. It makes it very easy to do. It makes it very quick to do. It prints things quickly as well, so if I want something and I want it in the next couple of hours, I can probably get it in the next couple of hours depending on the size. The Reflex RS is the best resin 3D printer I've ever used, but it should be because it's also the most expensive. I hope you found that helpful, if not slightly entertaining. Thank you again to HeyGears for sending the UltraCraft Reflex RS over for me to check out. There'll be a link to the printer in the description and in the pinned comment down below. Do go ahead and check it out if it interests you. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you for the next one.